Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Alex, the founder at Collect. Hello.
Hello, Christian.
Very nice to meet you. Please tell us what is Collect.
Yeah, sure. So Collect is it's a SaaS to get documents and data from your clients. We are mostly used in the onboarding phase by our clients. We are not targeting I would say specific type of clients. It can be used by any type of business. Just to give some examples, so we are used, for example, by real estate brokers. So when they are selling an house, they need to collect lots of documents to prepare everything. And so this is very easy to do with Collect. But we are also used by, I don't know, maybe immigration consultants, lawyer, also by fintechs, and also by lots of SaaS. Because in lots of SaaS you need to get documents from your clients. It can be import from your previous software that you were using, or it can be document that you need for professional services. So yeah, very easy to do.
Thank you for sharing. What did you say is the biggest problem that you solve?
Good question. I think the biggest, well, in our case, we are pretty transactional. I would say if you look at the landscape of customer onboarding, there are lots of tools that are, I would say, good for very high value contract where you will spend days or weeks to onboard your customer. So it's more like project management. In our case, we are more transactional. So I think we are very good at streamlining the process, facilitating all the back and forth. This kind of thing.
What are the best features of the product?
What I do like is integration. I think it's one of our strengths. We currently have 2 integrations with CRMs. So it's HubSpot CRM and Pipedrive.
Okay.
We also have an integration with DocuSign to sign electronically the documents. I think this is our strength. So you don't need to, I would say, to hack things. While we also have Zapier integration and an API, but having something native is way easier to manage.
Absolutely. And I'd love to hear your favorite customer success story.
The one that I prefer personally, so it's a Canadian company, and they are building condominiums, so very big buildings. And every time they are finishing a project, they need to, I would say, close all the contracts as fast as possible, because when they close the contract, they get paid. And there are like maybe hundreds of units, so millions of dollars every time they are finishing a building.
Yes.
And they told me before Collect, every time they had a closing, they needed to work like nights and days, just maybe a team of 5 to automate that. And using our software, they just needed to put a CSV file, doing all the requests at the same time, and then I think they reduced their time like by, I don't know, 80% or something like that. So
that's impressive.
It's a huge win.
How competitive is your niche that you operate in?
It's very competitive. Actually, I've got a file with all the competitors. Well, it's big landscape. I think there are around 40, 50 different companies.
Wow.
The barrier to entry is very low if you want to do something, I would say, simple, like listing leads of docs that you need to upload, or leads of data that you want to collect, and then just send a request. So I would say the minimum viable product is very easy to do. But if you want to go into something, I would say, more professional, then maybe we are between 5 and 10 companies, real companies. The other one are like tools.
Yeah.
for me.
I understand. Thank you for sharing. When did you start the company and how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah, so it's hard to know when I did the first line of code, maybe 2018.
Okay.
I did the first sale end of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it grew, I would say, slowly at the beginning, but I think it's part of the job. And especially when COVID hits, like 2 or 3 months later. So it was quite tough. And I did start this company because I used to have this problem in the past experience that I have. One of them was I was organizing an event called B2B Rocks. So it's an event dedicated to B2B and SaaS companies
Yes.
in France.
Yes.
And at this time, I was doing everything by my own. And so by doing that, at some point, I needed to collect lots of things from the speakers, from the partners. And what I did at this time, I was just doing a Typeform, which is a great tool. The problem with Typeform is, let's say that as a partner, you are uploading, I don't know, maybe the description of the company, but in French instead of English.
Yeah.
Then it was a nightmare to make it change. So I went back to email, which I was supposed to not to do. And so, it was very hard to manage, and you don't know who answered or not. So I would say that's what the original need. The fun thing is because of COVID, at the beginning of Collect, and then when I started to sell the software,
Yes.
I tried to reach some event company.
Okay.
And because of COVID, all the events were stopped and they all moved to online. And so they didn't need my software at all. So I needed to focus on, I would say, customers that have a bigger pain in this case.
Understand. How big is your team right now?
I'm solo. Actually, I'm doing everything by my own. So
Wow.
I'm coding, I'm doing the support, I'm doing nearly everything.
And I guess you're bootstrapped.
Yeah, bootstrapped. Sometimes I'm working with freelancers when I need, but I'm the only one full time.
And are you planning to keep it that way?
No, at some point I think I will hire some people. It's just hard to know where to start. Is it on the product side? Is it on the other parts? So right now I'm trying to just focus on to deliver the best product as possible.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I understand. What do you say was your biggest challenge since starting as a solo founder?
The biggest challenge is at the beginning you need to do so much. It can be product wise, it can be, I would say, sales wise or marketing wise. So I didn't know where to start, and I think the biggest challenge for me is still a challenge. It's to prioritize for, I would say, less appealing things to do, like for example marketing and sales. I prefer building the product than promoting it. So
Okay. Yeah, I understand. And how did you get your first customers?
I think for the 5 first customer it was like network. So I tried to reach lots of people that I knew, and I thought that they could need the software at some point. And then I started doing a little bit of SEO, also some AdWords, and also I think pretty fast there were some word of mouth, especially in some niche that start having some effects. So for example, in the mortgage broker industry, it's a small world. So if some people are happy with the solution, they will talk with the other business owner.
That's awesome. And what is the vision for the future of the company?
For the future, well, still having the best product. Well, I'm not product led actually, because I would say most of the time I'm doing a demo with the customers before they subscribe and start using the product. But I think having a very good product and a very powerful product is one of my strengths. So I need to continue that, maybe to also make it more self-serve. So to be fully PLG,
Yes.
it would make sense. And of course, and as I mentioned in the weakness and the challenges, promoting the product is, well, really the things to focus on. So yeah.
I appreciate the transparency. And I love to hear your full story. So how you started your career.
Actually, I did. I have a background in business, not in code, but I used to code when I was like a teenager, doing some pocket money, and then I decided to. Well, I started my career not in the tech industry at all. I spent 5 years in the pharmaceutical industry in France. I was what we call now a chief of staff of a big of the CEO of a French company, and well, everything was going right, but at some point I was like, okay, do I really want to work in this industry for 15, 20 years or even more? And I was like, no, I'm passionate about the technology.
Yes.
And so I decided to go back to I would say, my first love. And I created a first startup more than 10 years ago. It was called TripXP. And basically it was what Airbnb does with experience right now. So you could book an experience if you are visiting Paris, for example, and you want to, I don't know, maybe learn to prepare the bread and to go to a bakery. You could book that online. And so
Awesome.
we did that, but it was, well, very hard. I really hate marketplace. This is not a model that I like. And so after I think a year or two, we decided to close the company. Then I launched B2B Rocks, so the event dedicated to B2B and SaaS. Actually, it was pretty funny because at this time I had a blog in French, and I wrote a blog post because I saw a conference in the US dedicated to SaaS, and the conference was like, there are like the underdog and unknown companies. Everyone is talking about mobile apps or shiny objects, but nobody cares about software. And so I wrote this blog post, and I ended saying, "Hey, who's up to organize this kind of conference in France?" And lots of people reacted. So I was like, "Okay, let's do it." And so that's how it starts. Then after B2B Rocks, I worked a little bit with eFounders, which is a startup studio specialized in SaaS in France. And then after that, I decided to, not to give up, but to try to launch my own Bootstrap SaaS. I knew some friends who were living of that and having a good living. So I was like, okay, I can do it by my own. I would say I relearn coding, and a few years later, here we are.
That's a great journey. And you sold the B2B Rocks, right?
Yeah.
Did you have a physical event before selling it?
Well, I sold it to a VC firm actually. So we did some different events.
Okay.
So all physical.
Okay.
And I decided to sell because it was a lot of stress. If people didn't show up, also I was also for this business solo. So I was a bottleneck clearly on this business.
Yeah.
And on the D-Day, if I was not able to wake up and to show up, the event couldn't happen. So it was way too risky and lots
Yes.
of pressure, and also it's lots of pressure. I would say on a very short time. So I prefer to focus on something more stable. And so I decided to sell. And this VC firm, a few years later, they decided to sell again, and now to Advisor, a French company.
Wow.
I'm sure that you know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, of course. But in the period that the VC owned the
Yeah.
B2B Rocks, did they organize any events, or did they just
Yeah,
held
they
it?
did. I think they did two just before COVID.
Mhm.
And then they needed to cancel the events because of COVID, and starting again was like a very big challenge. So that's when they decided to sell it again.
Very interesting study. Yeah. Awesome. And now I think you're proud of what they're doing with B2B Rocks.
Yeah, it's they are doing a very good job. I went to I would say their first event
Yeah.
last year,
In-
but it was in Montpellier.
Yeah, I was
And
there too.
Yeah, you were there. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I think they did a good job for, everything was well organized. The venue was great. It was outdoor, a very good vibe. But I would say the people, lots of people, didn't came to the event, and I would say as attendees. And so I think that moving back to Paris makes lots of sense this year.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that there will be way more people, or at least way more, not to say interesting people, but yeah, you get it.
Yeah, I understand totally. It's a better place to host the event. And I know you also run your SaaS Connection podcast, right?
Yeah.
When did you start it?
So I started SaaS Connection in 2021. I've got some friends that have their own podcast, not dedicated to SaaS, but other verticals.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it sounds very interesting. I'm sure that, at this time there were no podcasts dedicated to SaaS in French. And I was like, okay, it would make lots of sense to do that. Also, it was, I had this lack of connection. When I was organizing B2B Rocks, for each edition, I was in touch with lots of funders. I was like doing all the preparation calls where you learn so much on their story.
Yes.
And to find the right topics with them. And this is a kind of thing that where you learn so much as a founder. And so I was like, okay, I could do the same. It would be a good opportunity to meet lots of French founders, to learn a lot for Collect. And so I decided to start this podcast. What I did I don't know the name of this. I think it's a burnt boat method. You know, when you are arriving on an island and you burn the boat, so you can't return to your own
You
base.
cannot go back. Yep.
Yeah. So I did nearly that. I ordered lots of gear to record the podcast. I was like, okay, now I've bought the gear. I have no choice than using it and start this podcast. So yeah, I did that, and I think 2 weeks later, it was started.
Awesome. And how many episodes did you do?
I've recorded around 90 episodes so far.
And what do you say was the biggest learning that you got from all those guests?
That's so much. I would say the few learnings that I have from the different podcasts, well, from the different guests that I received. First one is never give up, because, well, I know some of them, they could have gave up like maybe 10 times, and in the end they are selling their business for a very good amount of money. So never give up.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I think they are all passionate about what they are doing. It's not like for the money.
Yes.
Most of them, they were like, before SaaS or startups were attracting, and they will stay in this kind of business, even if it's, I would say, less shiny.
Yeah.
So, and the third one is, well, I try to interview lots of different people with lots of different backgrounds. So not only not only the
Founder.
most funded startups.
Yeah.
I think, well, but I know that you're doing the same, and well, this podcast is a proof. So yeah, I think you can learn so much from, well, on one side from very successful and funded startups, but also from bootstrap people, or even from people that failed. It's well, sometimes it's harder to interview them, but yeah, you could even learn from them. And also, I think, and maybe it's a huge difference between SaaS and other type of startups, is most of the time SaaS startups are not really fading, because if it's not running well, they can sell to another startup that have like assets, which is not the case for, I don't know, let's say a mobile app with a crazy amount of users, but well, no monetization or anything. Not saying that all the apps are this way, but I think you get the idea.
So if I learn French, I can also be a guest on your podcast.
Would be great.
I'd love to hear what's your favorite SaaS product apart from Collect.
Good question. I think Notion. Well, I'm not a Notion power user. I wish I would be one, but I didn't spend enough time to be a Notion power user. But I understand why it's so powerful and people love Notion so much. So I would say Notion. Figma for design is, well, even if it's not, I would say 100% SaaS. Well, it's a great one. I love, I would say my friend at Crisp, what they are doing. Well, there are lots of people, I would say small companies that I really appreciate. Crisp is one of them. Enter also is good SaaS. Well, there are lots.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Is there anything else that you want to mention on today's podcast?
Well, if you're speaking French or if you want to learn French, just listen to SaaS Connection, and I would say more than that, if you think that you can, you need a tool like Collect to onboard your users or to collect documents from your users, just ping me. I will be happy to make a demo.
Thank you so much for joining. You did great. Thank you.
Thank you.